Ever since I was a child, I noticed a strange pattern. Whatever I wished for, my stepsister got double. She took everything from me, and even my own mother loved her more. Until the day I decided to fight back. I want a 26-year-old boyfriend. The next day, she brought home a 52-year-old bald man. I want to lose 10 pounds. She dropped 20, landing herself straight in the ICU. My stepfather knelt before me, sobbing, "Please, I beg you, stop wishing." I smiled. I wished to stay up late for 6 hours every single night. My stepsister lost her mind on the spot. A single line of text popped up on my phone screen. System activated. User may make 1 wish per day. I stared at it for 3 seconds, locked my screen, rolled over, and went back to sleep. I'd seen enough of these annoying, intrusive spam ads to last a lifetime, but the next morning the words were still there. It wasn't a pop-up. There was no close button, no redirect link. It was just a line of white text against a black background, hovering at the very top of my screen like it had been nailed there. I tried taking a screenshot. The text didn't show up in the image. I tried taking a photo of my phone with an old camera and sending it to a colleague. In the photo, the screen looked completely normal. I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then I typed out 4 words. I want $100. Nothing happened. I tried again, rephrasing it. I wish for $100. The text on the screen shifted. Wish granted. I waited all day, but nothing out of the ordinary occurred. That evening, when I walked into the kitchen, my mother slapped a $100 bill onto the table. "For you," she said, her eyes glued to her own phone screen. "Go buy a decent coat. Stop walking around looking like a stray." I picked up the bill. Before I could even feel the warmth of the paper, she spoke again. "Oh, by the way, I bought Dulcie that winter coat she wanted. The $200 one, it looks gorgeous on her." My fingers tightened around the bill. 200. I got 100. She got 200. My mother didn't even look up. "Don't go getting upset. Hers was on sale. It was originally over 300. I wasn't upset. I was just remembering things. When I was 7, it was my birthday, and I closed my eyes and wished for a Barbie doll. The next day, my mother brought one home for me. That same afternoon, Dulcie received 2. Her aunt mailed them to her. My mother had explained back then, "It has nothing to do with you." When I was 9, I got straight A's on my report card and wished for a new pair of running shoes. That weekend, my mother took me to the mall and bought them. But as we were checking out, Dulcie pointed to another pair on the shelf and said they were pretty. My mother looked at the price tag, bought them, and then pointed to another pair nearby, saying those looked nice too. She bought both, 2 pairs. I got 1 pair, she got 2. When I was 12, I wished for a bedroom of my own. We moved into a new house that year, and I was given the tiny box room. Dulcie got the massive bedroom right next to the master suite, complete with an attached study nook. "She's starting middle school soon," my stepfather had argued. "She needs a proper space to study." My mother had nodded in agreement. I hadn't said a word. Looked at individually, every single one of those incidents had a perfectly rational explanation. A gift from an aunt, a sale at the mall, a practical academic need. But what if you lined them up side by side? I wanted 1, she got 2. I wanted a share, she got double. Every single time. It was too consistent to be dismissed as a series of coincidences. I sat on the edge of my bed, unlocking my phone. The text was still hovering there. "System activated. User may make 1 wish per day." I stared at it, the silence of the room pressing in on me. How long had this system actually been active? I remembered childhood birthdays, the smoke of the candles, the silent promises I whispered into the dark behind my eyelids. Every single one of those wishes had come true, and every single time, Dulcie had received double. I had never connected the two. I had spent my entire life believing the fault lay with me. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I wasn't likable. Dulcie was the sweet one, the one who knew exactly what to say to make people smile, the one who was inherently easier to love. My mother loved her more because she deserved to be loved. I didn't. But looking at the cold white text on my screen, a sudden, sharp clarity cut through years of quiet resentment. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough, it was just how the rules were written. I got 1, she got 2. It wasn't favoritism, and it wasn't luck. It was a mechanism, a hidden gear turning in the background of our lives. And now the gear was waiting for me to turn it. I locked my phone and lay back down on the bed. Through the thin drywall, I could hear Dulcie's bright, melodic laughter. She was FaceTiming my mother from her room, talking about how warm her new $200 coat was. I closed my eyes. Only one thought echoed in the quiet of my mind. I finally know how to use this. My name is Gwen, I'm 22. My mother, Helen, divorced my father when I was 6. A year later, she married my stepfather, Robert. Robert had a daughter of his own. She was a year younger than me, and her name was Dulcie. It was a fitting name. She was, in every sense of the word, sweet. When we first moved in together, I was a quiet, sullen 7-year-old. Dulcie, at 6, already knew how to charm. The moment she met my mother, she started calling her Mom in a voice as soft and sweet as spun sugar. Helen ate it up. "Look at Dulcie. She's so considerate," Helen would say, her fingers gently braiding Dulcie's hair while I watched from the doorway. "Why can't you try to be more like her?" I would just stand there, silent. How was I supposed to do that? Was I supposed to call a strange man Dad? I couldn't bring myself to do it. Robert didn't seem to care anyway. His entire world revolved around Dulcie. Over the years, the dynamics of our household shifted into a quiet, suffocating routine. It wasn't an overt, screaming kind of favoritism. It was a slow, daily erosion. Take dinner, for instance. If Helen made pork chops, Dulcie always reached for the first one. It wasn't a rule, just a habit of her quick hands. But if I ever reached first, Dulcie would quietly set her fork down, lower her head, and stare at her plate in silence. Then Helen would shoot me a look. I knew that look by heart. It meant, "You're the older sister. Just let her have it." Or take clothes. When the seasons changed and Helen took us shopping, Dulcie would try on 3 sweaters and declare them all beautiful. Helen would buy all 3 without hesitation. When it was my turn, I'd try on one. Helen would glance at the price tag and sigh. "This is a bit expensive, Gwen. Let's find something else." Dulcie would chime in, "Gwen, that color doesn't really suit you anyway. The gray one over there would look much better." The gray one was half the price. Helen would immediately beam. "See? Dulcie has such an eye for these things." It happened so often that the boundaries blurred. I couldn't tell where her malice ended and my paranoia began. But there was one memory that remained crystal clear. It was my 15th birthday. Helen had ordered a small sheet cake, just big enough for the 4 of us. Before I blew out the candles, she told me to make a wish. I closed my eyes and silently wished for a phone. Back then, almost everyone in my class had one, and I was tired of being the odd one out. A few days later, Helen handed me a phone. It wasn't new, it was her old, cracked upgrade. "Make it work," she said simply. And don't go bringing it to school to mess around. I swallowed my disappointment and took it. That same week, Dulcie came home carrying 2 brand new phones. One was a gift from Robert. The other, she claimed, she had won in a school raffle. 2. I got a cracked hand-me-down. She got 2 brand new upgrades. At the time, I accepted it as my lot in life. But looking back now, the pattern was flawless. 15 years, and the math had never failed once. Did Dulcie know? I wasn't sure, but I remembered a detail. Every year on my birthday, after the candles were blown out, Dulcie would lean in close, her eyes wide and curious, and whisper, "Gwen, what did you wish for?" I'd tell her that if I said it out loud, it wouldn't come true. She'd just smile, her eyes curving into crescent moons. "Well, you have to tell me next time, okay? Next time. Every single year," she asked. I used to think she was just being a sister. Now I realized she was verifying her inventory. My phone screen flickered in the dark. Remaining wishes today. 1. I didn't rush. I needed to test the parameters of the system first. I opened my notes app and created a simple spreadsheet. On the left, I wrote my wish. On the right, I left a blank column to record what Dulcie received. In the first row, I typed $100. On the right, I wrote $200 winter coat. The timeline matched perfectly, but I needed more data. I opened the system and typed, "I wish for someone to send me a bouquet of flowers tomorrow." Wish granted. The next afternoon, a delivery courier arrived at our apartment with a modest arrangement of wildflowers. The card read, "Thank you for being a valued customer," sent from an online nursery where I had purchased a ceramic planter months ago. I took a photo of the flowers. When I got home from work that evening, there were 2 massive, elaborate arrangements sitting on the entryway table, one of deep red roses, the other of delicate baby's breath, both arranged in heavy glass vases. Helen was arranging them, a proud smile on her face. Some guys from Dulcie's office sent them. She really is popular wherever she goes. Dulcie was curled up on the couch, taking photos of the bouquets for her social media. When she saw me walk in, she offered a sweet, sympathetic smile. "Oh, Gwen, you got flowers today too? What a strange coincidence." I looked at her smile and said nothing. 1 bouquet for me, 2 for her. A strange coincidence indeed. Back in my room, I opened my spreadsheet and filled in the second row. 1 bouquet, 2 bouquets. The data was conclusive. The rule was absolute. I wish for X, and Dulcie receives 2X, no exceptions. I closed the spreadsheet, unlocked the system interface, and stared at the glowing white text. It was time for her to return what she had taken from me over the last 15 years. But I had to be careful. She had been receiving double benefits for so long that she had grown comfortable. If the supply suddenly cut off, she'd notice. But what if the wishes weren't beneficial? What if I wished for something negative? If I wished for hardship X, would she receive hardship 2X? I sat on my bed, planning my first move. It had to be precise, devastating, and entirely disconnected from me. I stayed up all night thinking. By the time the sky turned gray outside my window, I was smiling. Before leaving for work the next morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time. 22, and I had never been in a relationship. It wasn't for a lack of interest from others. I just didn't have the mental bandwidth. Surviving the quiet warfare of my household took every ounce of energy I had. Dulcie was different. She had been dating since she was 18, swapping boyfriends as easily as she swapped seasons, each one wealthier and more attentive than the last. And every time Helen would sigh happily and say, "Dulcie really knows how to choose them," I never replied. Today I was going to make my first real wish, but before I did, I had to lay the groundwork. During breakfast, I casually brought up a fake detail. "Mom, a colleague of mine offered to set me up with someone. I'm thinking about meeting him." Helen's fork paused midair. She glanced at me. "What's his deal?" "Nothing crazy. He's 26, works in corporate." Helen let out a soft, dismissive grunt. 26? You're only 22, Gwen. Why are you looking for someone so much older? Dulcie, who was quietly sipping her smoothie next to her, looked up at me but remained silent. "It's just a coffee date," I said. Shrugged. "It doesn't mean we're getting married." "Whatever," Helen said, turning back to her food. The conversation didn't matter. What mattered was that I had planted the phrase 26-year-old boyfriend firmly in Dulcie's ears. Back in my room, I unlocked my phone and opened the system. Taking a deep breath, I typed, "I wish to have a
The result came faster than I expected. At lunch, my phone buzzed. Wish fulfilled. That was it. No explanation. I frowned. A little anticlimactic, I muttered. Nothing happened for the rest of the afternoon. Then I got home. The front door wasn't even fully open before I heard Helen shrieking with delight. "Gwen, come quickly. Dolce brought someone home." I stepped inside. Standing in the living room was a man in an expensive charcoal suit. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair with a few silver strands at the temples. For one glorious second, my heart skipped. Did the system actually work? Then he turned around. The top of his head gleamed under the chandelier. Not a few silver strands. Almost no hair at all. The front half of his scalp had surrendered years ago. Deep wrinkles framed his face. His smile revealed teeth just a little too white. "Dolce," he chuckled warmly, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Aren't you going to introduce me?" Dolce's smile looked glued on. "This is Victor." Helen clasped both hands together. "Oh, he's so distinguished." Robert nodded approvingly. "A mature man. Stable. That's what I like to see." I quietly asked, "How old is he?" Victor answered proudly before anyone else could. 52. The room went silent. I nearly bit through my tongue trying not to laugh. 26. Double. 52. The system hadn't disappointed me. Dolce's smile twitched. "He looks younger in person." Victor beamed. "Everyone says that." No one did. He happily continued talking. "I've already told Dolce I'd love for her to meet my grandchildren." "Grandchildren?" Helen blinked. "Grandchildren. 3 of them," Victor said proudly as he pulled out his wallet. He proceeded to show everyone approximately 47 photos. "This is little Mason. Swipe. This is Chloe. Swipe. This was taken after my knee replacement. Swipe. This is my fishing boat. Swipe. This is my cholesterol medication." I had to excuse myself before I laughed out loud. Back in my room, I shut the door and collapsed onto my bed, burying my face in a pillow. The muffled laughter finally exploded out of me. The system was ruthless. It didn't interpret wishes emotionally, only mathematically. I wished for a 26-year-old boyfriend. Dolce received a 52-year-old one. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Unfortunately, the next morning, the second half of my wish arrived. As I was leaving for work, someone called my name. Gwen. I turned around. Standing beside a sleek black sedan was a handsome man in a navy business suit. He smiled. I'm Ethan. He looked exactly 26. Clean-cut. Athletic. Bright eyes. Confident without being arrogant. I've been trying to reach you through your coworker. He scratched the back of his neck. I know this is sudden, but would you like to get coffee? I stared. The system hadn't created a fake boyfriend. It had simply arranged one. Before I could answer, another voice interrupted. Gwen. Dolce had stepped outside. The color drained from her face the instant she saw Ethan. Then she looked at Victor climbing out of his SUV behind her, enthusiastically waving a walking cane he apparently insisted he didn't need. My beautiful Dolce. He shuffled over. Ethan politely blinked. Is that your father? Victor laughed so hard he started coughing. Oh no. I'm her boyfriend. Silence. A bird stopped chirping. Even the neighbor watering his lawn froze. Dolce looked like she wanted the sidewalk to swallow her whole. It's not what it looks like. Victor slipped an arm around her shoulders. We're very serious. We're discussing marriage. Dolce nearly fainted. Ethan slowly turned back toward me. I suddenly feel incredibly lucky. I smiled. So do I. As Ethan opened the passenger door for me, I caught Dolce staring. Not at me. At Ethan. There it was. For the first time in our lives. She hadn't gotten the better deal. Her fingers curled into fists. The sweetness in her expression cracked for just a second. Just long enough for me to see what had been hiding underneath all these years. Envy. Raw. Burning. And, for the first time, she was the one forced to watch me walk away. When I got home that evening, the atmosphere in the house was strange. Normally, Helen would spend dinner gushing over Dolce's latest achievement. Instead, she kept sneaking uncertain glances toward Victor, who was enthusiastically seasoning his mashed potatoes with enough pepper to fumigate the neighborhood. He had insisted on taking everyone out to dinner. My treat, he declared. Now he was explaining, in painstaking detail, the proper way to prepare for a colonoscopy. And trust me, Victor said, wagging his fork, the lemon-flavored prep is a trap. Robert awkwardly cleared his throat. Helen suddenly found her water glass fascinating. Dolce looked ready to launch herself through the restaurant window. I quietly ate my pasta. This was delightful. So, Gwen, Victor said cheerfully, Dolce tells me you're seeing someone too. Before I could answer, Ethan walked into the restaurant. He texted me earlier asking if I'd like dessert after dinner. We'd agreed to meet here. He spotted me and smiled. There you are. The contrast was almost comical. Victor struggled to stand without using both hands. Ethan crossed the room with effortless confidence. Victor complained about his lower back. Ethan had just come from rock climbing. Victor proudly showed everyone pictures of his retirement cruise. Ethan casually mentioned the startup he'd just been promoted at. Helen's eyes widened. You're only 26? Ethan nodded. Yes, ma'am. And you're already a department manager? I've been fortunate. Dolce stared at him. Then at Victor. Then back at Ethan. Her smile grew tighter by the second. Victor suddenly reached across the table and affectionately pinched Dolce's cheek. My sweet girl. Dolce flinched. I've already started looking at wedding venues. The fork slipped from her hand with a loud clang. Wedding. Victor looked surprised. Well, of course. I've waited long enough in life. I know what I want. I don't believe in wasting time. Helen nearly choked on her drink. Robert looked like he desperately wanted to disappear. I lowered my head to hide my smile. This system was terrifyingly literal. It hadn't just given Dolce an older boyfriend. It had apparently found one who believed they'd be together forever. That night, I updated my spreadsheet. Wish. 26-year-old boyfriend. Result. Ethan, age 26. Dolce, Victor, age 52. Still exactly double. Beneath it, I added another note. System interprets numbers literally. That changed everything. It wasn't granting intentions. It was granting wording. Which meant wording was everything. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. If numbers mattered, what about weight? Height? Time? Money? Luck? My heart began to race. The possibilities were endless. The next morning, I woke to the familiar white text floating across my screen. Remaining wishes today, 1. Instead of rushing, I made coffee. Sat by the window. Opened my notebook. I wrote a single title across the top. Experiments. Underneath it, I listed possibilities. Money. Health. Sleep. Age. Weight. Then my pen stopped. Weight. A slow smile spread across my face. Not because I wanted to lose weight. Because I remembered something. Dolce had been obsessed with staying thin since high school. Every calorie. Every dessert. Every number on the scale. She checked them religiously. I looked at my reflection in the window. I wished to lose 10 pounds. Simple. Specific. Harmless for me. Potentially catastrophic for her. I picked up my phone. I wish to lose 10 pounds. The screen flashed. Wish granted. Nothing happened immediately. I went to work as usual. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. The first message was from Helen. Come to St. Mary's Hospital now. The second was from Robert. It's Dolce. Something's terribly wrong. I arrived 20 minutes later to find Helen sobbing in the waiting room. Robert paced frantically. What happened? I asked. Helen looked up, her mascara streaked with tears. She collapsed. A doctor says she's lost nearly 20 pounds since this morning. What kind of illness does that? A nurse rushed past pushing an empty wheelchair. Another doctor shouted for more fluids. Behind the swinging emergency room doors, I caught a glimpse of Dolce. She looked almost unrecognizable. Her cheeks had hollowed. Her skin hung loosely around her arms. Doctors moved around her in a frenzy, trying to stabilize her. One wish. 10 pounds for me. 20 for her. The math never failed. The emergency department was in complete chaos. Doctors hurried in and out of Dolce's room, calling for lab results, scans, and every specialist they could find. No signs of trauma. Blood work is inconclusive. Run it again. It doesn't make sense. I stood beside the vending machines, sipping a paper cup of coffee. For the first time in my life. I wasn't the one everyone was staring at. Helen burst through the double doors. Doctor. A gray-haired physician removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. We've stabilized her. Helen let out a shaky breath. But his single word made her freeze. We still don't know why this happened. Robert frowned. What do you mean? I mean, the doctor said carefully, it's as though her body lost approximately 20 pounds in an extremely short period of time. Fat, muscle, even water. It's medically improbable. Could it happen again? The doctor hesitated. We don't know. Helen burst into tears. My phone vibrated. I slipped it from my pocket beneath my jacket. Wish successfully completed. Remaining wishes today, 0. No additional explanation. No warning. Just confirmation. I locked the screen before anyone noticed. A few minutes later, the nurse allowed us into Dolce's room. She looked exhausted. Her hospital gown hung loosely over her shoulders. The confidence she'd worn like perfume for years had vanished. Gwen. Her voice was barely a whisper. I walked over. How are you feeling? She swallowed. Scared. For a moment, she genuinely looked like the little girl I'd met 15 years ago. Then she grabbed my wrist. Her eyes searched mine. Did anything strange happen to you today? There it was. Not, how are you? Not, thanks for coming. She was checking the inventory. I blinked innocently. I had a pretty normal day. Her grip tightened. Really? Really? She slowly let go. Her face grew thoughtful. Very thoughtful. 3 days later, Dolce was discharged. She was physically stable, but the doctors ordered weeks of monitoring. Every specialist had reached the same conclusion. They couldn't explain what had happened. The mystery made the local news. Woman suffers unexplained 20-pound weight loss in a single day. Medical experts debated it online. Nutritionists speculated. Conspiracy theorists had a field day. No one had an answer. Back at home, the atmosphere had changed completely. Helen hovered over Dolce constantly. Sweetheart, eat another bite. Are you dizzy? Do you need to lie down? Dolce accepted the attention quietly. But she had changed. She watched me. Constantly. If I smiled, she noticed. If I checked my phone, she noticed. If I came home with coffee, she noticed. She was waiting. Trying to connect invisible dots. One evening, I walked into the kitchen to find her alone. She looked up. Gwen. Yeah. She hesitated. What have you been wishing for lately? I laughed. Wishing? You know. She forced a smile. Birthday wishes. I leaned against the counter. My birthday was months ago. Right. Silence stretched between us. Then I tilted my head. Why? No reason. She stood up too quickly. I was just curious. As she hurried upstairs, I noticed something she'd forgotten on the table. A small notebook. It had fallen from her sweater pocket. I shouldn't have looked. I did anyway. The first page made my pulse quicken. Things Gwen gets. Below it were dates. The bouquet of flowers. The $100. A new coat. Even today's free coffee from work. Every tiny bit of good fortune I'd received over the past week was listed. On the opposite page was another column. Things I got. 2 flower bouquets. Victor. Hospital. 20-pound weight loss. Question marks. Arrows. Circled dates. At the bottom, written so hard the pen had nearly torn through the paper, was a single sentence. It can't be coincidence anymore. I quietly closed the notebook and slipped it back exactly where she'd left it. So, she didn't know the rule. Not yet. But she knew there was a rule. And, from now on, every wish would have to be made even more carefully. Because the game had changed. For the first time in her life, Dolce wasn't just enjoying the benefits. She was hunting for the source. That night, I rewrote my entire strategy. Until now, I'd been treating the system like a weapon. I needed to start treating it like a science experiment. Every wish had to answer a question. How literal was it? Did it understand context? Could it affect emotions? Could it create opportunities instead of objects? Most importantly, could it backfire? The next morning, the familiar text appeared. Remaining wishes today, 1. I smiled. Today's experiment would be simple. I typed carefully. I wish to stay up 6 hours later than usual tonight without feeling sleepy. The screen flashed. Wish granted. No mention of side effects. Perfect. The workday passed uneventfully. I finished a project that had been sitting on my desk for weeks, then met Ethan for dinner. He was funny without trying to be. He listened more than he talked. When he walked me home, he stopped outside the apartment building. I've been meaning to ask, he said. How are things with your family? I laughed softly. Complicated. I figured. You don't have to tell me. But if you ever want to, I'll listen. For a second, I forgot about the system. Forgot about Dolce. Forgot about keeping score. It felt normal. Almost peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Helen. Come home now. The moment I opened the apartment door, I heard screaming. Robert was trying to wrestle something out of Dolce's hands. Helen was crying. Dolce, stop. I don't need sleep. Dolce shouted, her eyes bloodshot. I'm not tired. I've cleaned my room 3 times. I reorganized every cabinet. I alphabetized the spice rack. She laughed. Then immediately burst into tears. Then laughed again. I looked at the clock. 3 in the morning. She should have been asleep hours ago. Instead, she looked like she'd consumed 20 cups of coffee. Robert finally managed to take away the 4th energy drink she'd opened. When did this start? I asked. Helen wiped her face. Yesterday evening. She says she isn't sleepy. Not even a little. We gave her tea. Warm milk. Melatonin. Nothing. Dolce suddenly pointed at me. You. Everyone turned. Her eyes were wild. What? She stared. For several long seconds. Then slowly lowered her hand. Nothing. But I knew that look. She was comparing. Checking. Calculating. I calmly yawned. A real yawn. The wish had worked perfectly for me. I'd simply stayed awake 6 comfortable hours later than usual before sleeping like a baby. For Dolce. Double. 12 extra hours. Her body's natural rhythm had been completely thrown into chaos. 3 days later. It got worse. She still couldn't sleep properly. Doctors diagnosed temporary acute insomnia. Medication barely helped. Her emotions became unpredictable. She'd laugh at commercials. Cry over cereal. Forget conversations she'd had 5 minutes earlier. Victor, bless his oblivious heart, showed up with flowers. I thought cheering you up might help. Dolce looked at the bouquet, then at him, then burst into hysterical laughter that lasted nearly 5 full minutes. Victor looked deeply concerned. Helen looked horrified. I quietly excused myself before anyone noticed I was smiling. That evening, as I entered my room, I noticed something unusual. The drawer of my bedside table wasn't fully closed. I always closed it. Always. Someone had been in here. Nothing appeared missing. But when I opened my notebook containing my wish experiments, the bookmark I'd left on page 12 had moved to page 8. Someone had looked through it. Not read everything. Just searched. My eyes narrowed. Dolce. She wasn't just watching me anymore. She was investigating. I closed the notebook and looked toward the hallway. A faint floorboard creaked outside my door. Someone hurried away. I smiled. Good. Let her investigate. Because she was looking in completely the wrong place. She thought the answers were hidden in my room. She never imagined they had been floating on the screen of my phone all along. Dolce's obsession spiraled overnight. She stopped caring about work. Stopped posting online. Stopped flirting with Victor. Instead, she watched me. Every bite I took. Every package that arrived. Every phone call I answered. She even started following me after work. One evening, I deliberately walked into a bookstore, stayed for 20 minutes, then left through another exit. When I looked back, Dolce was standing in the middle of the sidewalk, frantically searching for me. She wasn't trying to be my sister anymore. She was hunting me. That night, I decided it was time to stop playing defense. The next morning, the system appeared. Remaining wishes today, 1. I smiled. I wished to lose 10 pounds. Wish granted. By noon, my clothes fit a little better. At 12:17 p.m., my phone exploded. Mom, 12 missed calls. Robert, 8 missed calls. Dolce, help. I answered Robert first. Gwen, get to the hospital. Hurry. When I arrived, the emergency room looked like a disaster movie. Doctors sprinted down the hallway. Nurses shouted for crash carts. Helen was on her knees outside a treatment room, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. What happened? Robert grabbed my shoulders. She collapsed again. The doctors say she's lost another 20 pounds. I looked through the glass. Dolce barely resembled herself. Her face had become gaunt. Her arms looked frighteningly thin. Machines surrounded her. A doctor stormed out. If we can't stop whatever is happening, her organs will start shutting down. Helen broke down completely. No, please. Save my daughter. Hours later, Dolce finally regained consciousness. The first thing she did was look at me. Not her parents. Not the doctors. Me. Gwen. Her voice was barely audible. Tell me the truth. I stepped closer. The truth about what? She burst into tears. I know it's you. The room fell silent. Helen stared. Robert frowned. What are you talking about? Dolce pointed at me with a trembling finger. Every time. Every single time something good happens to her. Something impossible happens to me. You have to stop. Helen snapped. Have you lost your mind? But Dolce wouldn't stop. She wished for flowers. I got 2 bouquets. She got a boyfriend. I got Victor. She lost weight. I lost 20 pounds and almost died. Robert's face slowly changed. He turned toward me. Gwen. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. New wish available. I looked down. Then back up. An idea hit me. A dangerous one. Slowly, I smiled. If you really think I'm responsible. I pulled out my phone. Then let's test your theory. Dolce's eyes widened. No. I began typing. Helen rushed forward. Gwen, what are you doing? Robert's voice cracked. Stop. Even the heart monitor beside Dolce started beeping faster. My thumb hovered over the screen. Dolce suddenly screamed. Please. She threw herself out of the hospital bed. The 4 ripped from her arm. Blood splattered across the white floor. She crawled toward me on her hands and knees. No more. I don't want double anymore. I'll give it all back. I'll give back everything. My room. The gifts. The money. The phones. The jewelry. You can have all of it. She collapsed at my feet, clutching my leg. Gwen. I don't want to die. The hallway had gone completely silent. Doctors. Nurses. Patients. Everyone was staring. Even Helen's face had gone white. For the first time in 22 years. Dolce wasn't the princess of the family. She was a terrified young woman begging the sister she'd always looked down on for mercy. And, for the first time, Helen looked at me instead of her. The hallway was silent. Dolce was still clinging to my ankle, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. I'll give it all back. I swear. Helen stared at her in disbelief. Dolce, you've never begged like this. Dolce looked up at her, tears streaming down her face. Mom, please. That single word froze Helen. Mom. Not Helen. Not a carefully chosen, sweet response. Just a frightened cry. For the first time, Helen saw something she had never wanted to see. Fear. Not for me. For losing everything. Robert slowly spoke. What did you mean? Give it all back. Dolce's face drained of color. She realized what she'd said. Too late. You said your room. Robert's voice hardened. You said the money. You said the gifts. You said everything. Helen frowned. What are you talking about? Dolce couldn't answer. Instead, she cried harder. Robert looked at me. Then at Dolce. Then back again. A memory surfaced. The phones. He whispered. Gwen got 1. Dolce somehow got 2. Helen blinked. The winter coats. Robert continued. Gwen got 1. Dolce got 2. The birthday dolls. The bedrooms. The running shoes. Each sentence landed like a hammer. Helen's expression slowly crumbled. One memory after another flooded back. Every single time. 1 for Gwen. 2 for Dolce. She had always found an excuse. A sale. A raffle. A generous aunt. Good timing. Now. Lined up together. The pattern looked horrifying. Helen sat down heavily. My God. She looked at me. Then whispered something she had never said before. I'm sorry. The words hit harder than any slap. Not because they fixed anything. But because they came 22 years too late. Within a week. Everything started unraveling. Victor ended the relationship. Not because of her age. Not because of the hospital. Because he'd overheard her screaming in her sleep. Take it back. Stop doubling it. He quietly packed the gifts he'd bought her and left. I hope you find peace, he said. Then he walked away. Her office wasn't much kinder. Weeks of unexplained absences. Erratic behavior. A public emotional breakdown during a client meeting. Human resources called her in. When she left the building carrying a cardboard box, she knew she wasn't coming back. The hospital bills arrived next. Insurance refused to cover several experimental tests. Helen stared at the total. $48,000. Robert quietly put the paper down. We can't keep paying like this. They canceled vacations. Sold Robert's motorcycle. Refinanced the house. The family's comfortable life vanished piece by piece. Then came the final blow. One rainy afternoon, Helen opened the storage room to make space. Stacked inside were dozens of unopened shopping bags. Designer handbags. Jewelry. Shoes. Electronics. Many still had price tags attached. She slowly realized something. Dolce hadn't loved those things. She'd simply collected them because they had appeared. Because there had always been more. Double. Always double. Helen sat on the floor surrounded by thousands of dollars worth of untouched possessions. And cried. Not because of the money. Because she finally understood. Every time she'd praised Dolce. Every time she told Gwen to be the bigger sister. Every time she dismissed Gwen's disappointment. She had helped build this mountain. That evening, Helen knocked on my bedroom door. She looked older than I remembered. Gwen. I can't undo the past. I know that. She swallowed. But, would you let me try to be your mother now? I looked at her for a long time. I'll let you try. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was simply the first honest conversation we'd ever had. Outside my door, I heard quiet footsteps. Dolce. She wasn't eavesdropping to gloat anymore. She was crying. Alone. For the first time in her life, there was no extra gift waiting around the corner. No miraculous second prize. No effortless advantage. The invisible tide that had carried her since childhood had finally gone still, and she had to face the life she'd built without it. 3 months later, the house was unrecognizable. The expensive decorations were gone. The luxury handbags had been sold. The spare bedroom had become a storage room filled with moving boxes. Robert stood in the living room holding a folder of unpaid bills. "We're selling the house." No one argued. There was nothing left to say. Dolce had become a ghost. She no longer dressed in designer clothes. She no longer smiled for photos. The friends who had surrounded her when life was easy slowly disappeared. Calls stopped coming. Messages went unanswered. The attention she had mistaken for love vanished the moment there was nothing left to gain. She finally understood that many people had loved the version of her life, not the person herself. One evening, Helen opened an old photo album. There were hundreds of pictures. Almost every page centered on Dolce. Birthday after birthday. Christmas after Christmas. Graduations. Vacations. Then, near the back, one photograph of me. Just one. Helen broke down. She finally saw her own blindness laid out across 22 years of memories. "I did this," she whispered through tears. "I kept choosing one daughter over the other." No one answered. There was no excuse left to hide behind. The following week, Robert quietly handed me a folder. Inside were the deeds transferring my tiny childhood savings account, which had always been controlled by my parents, entirely into my name, along with the proceeds from selling several items that had originally been bought for the family. "It doesn't repay what happened," he said. "It never will. But it belongs to you." I accepted it without celebration. Justice wasn't the same as happiness. That night, I looked at my phone. Remaining wishes today, 1. The white text waited patiently. For months, every wish had been an experiment. Every experiment had revealed another rule. Now there was only one thing left to do. I typed slowly. I wish to live an ordinary, peaceful life surrounded by people who genuinely love me. The screen remained still for a long moment. Then, wish granted. I smiled. For the first time. I didn't wonder what Dolce would receive. I simply put the phone away. The next morning, I moved into my own apartment. It wasn't luxurious. It wasn't huge. But every plate in the kitchen was mine. Every book on the shelf was mine. Every memory I would make there would be mine. Ethan arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Ready?" I looked around my new home. "Yeah." He took my hand. We stepped inside together. Behind us, the door closed with a soft click. It sounded less like an ending, and more like the first page of a new life. A month later, I heard one final piece of news. Helen and Robert had separated. Not because they hated each other. Because the weight of years of regret had become too much to carry under the same roof. Dolce moved to a small apartment on the other side of the city and started over with an entry-level job. For the first time, every promotion, every paycheck, every friendship would have to be earned without mysterious good fortune smoothing the path. As for me, I never made another wish. The system continued to offer one every morning. Every morning, I ignored it. Eventually, one final message appeared. "User has chosen reality over miracles. System terminated." The white text vanished forever. I stared at the blank screen for a long time. Then I smiled, slipped the phone into my pocket, and walked forward without looking back. Sometimes the greatest wish isn't